So I hope you can see the writing pad now.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, fine. So my computer has become like as sluggish and as old as me, so it takes some time to respond. But anyway, let us get started. So in the previous class, we were talking about an expression for the stress in terms of the rate of deformation. So one is the hydrostatic stress and another is the deviatory component of the stress. So what are the assumptions under which this is valid? You have to remember it that it is uh, homogeneous, isotropic, Newtonian fluid. So homogeneous will implicate that lambda and mu are not position dependent. They are like constants so far as position dependence goes. And isotropy and Newtonian isotropy, we have discussed the rotational invariance, which could boil down or bring down the large number of 81 constants to finally these constants lambda and mu, along with Newtonian. That means you have a linear mapping between the stress and the rate of deformation. So this is the generalized Newton's law of viscosity for homogeneous isotropic Newtonian fluid. So you might find it somewhat odd as compared to the Newton's law of viscosity that we have learned earlier. Not that they are wrong, but they are all simplified. Remember that when you were all in junior school or maybe even pre-primary school, you first got exposed to say small sort of picture books like Ramayana for children, Mahabharata for children, like that. So they are glimpses of Ramayana and Mahabharata, but they are not really the real Ramayana and Mahabharata as they are written in terms of the the very expanded depiction that the respective authors made. So those are just simplified children representation of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Similarly, the Newton's law of viscosity tau equal to mu du dy, I call it Newton's law of viscosity for children. Just like Ramayana and Mahabharata for children, it is Newton's law of viscosity for children. And this is like more. It is not the most general one, but a more sort of rigorous representation of the Newton's law of viscosity. Now we will consider example of normal stress. So we all understand that there could be normal stress where I is equal to J and shear stress where I is not equal to J. So normal stresses we will just write I equal to 1, J equal to 1, we will give tau 1, 1. This is minus P plus lambda del UK del XK plus 2 mu. Tau 2, 2 is this one. Okay. So what it all means is not just some expressions where we have substituted I equal to J, but very important physical insights which are actually perceived wrongly from the way in which viscosity is introduced in junior class, school and junior college class. We develop a natural feeling that viscous effect is associated with only shear stress or tangential, not normal stress. But here you see certain terms. So these are viscous normal stresses. And you can clearly understand that these are associated with the rate of linear deformation, not the rate of shear deformation. So what it means is that the concept that viscous effect is associated only with shear stress is completely wrong. It is viscous effect that can be associated with both normal and shear stress. Because viscous effect is associated with deformation, it could be shear deformation, it could be linear deformation. And in fact, you have a volumetric deformation here, and that we will also see that implicitly linked with viscous effect, not directly but implicitly. So that is the first learning. The second is that if within a fluid you have a point 1, now you have tau 11, which is the normal stress along say x1, tau 22, which is the normal stress along x2, and tau 33 normal stress along x3. But the question is that if you want to average these out, it will be different in these 3 directions. But if you want to average these out, then what is that average? So to calculate that average, what we will do is simply we add and then we will divide by 3. So we will write tau 11 plus tau 22 plus tau 33 divided by 3. So everything we will add and divide by 3. So that will be minus p plus lambda by 3, 3 lambda by 3, del u k del x k, plus 2 mu by 3. If you take 2 mu as common, this plus this will also be just in the index notation, this one. So that is actually a condensed form of the sum of these 3. Now, just as per definition, this we define as minus of Pn, which we call as mechanical pressure. Pm is the mechanical pressure. So mechanical pressure is just the average of the normal hydrodynamic stresses. Why the minus sign? Minus sign is because normal stress by definition is tensile positive, but pressure by definition is compressive positive. So to make a parity with the terminology pressure, we have considered compressive as positive, and therefore tensile to make it positive we have accommodated the negative sign. Just a sign confusion. So that means if we write the final expression, mechanical pressure and the other form of pressure, this is known as thermodynamic pressure. So what is thermodynamic pressure? Thermodynamic pressure is a pressure that satisfies the thermodynamic equation of state. For example, for ideal gas, it is PV equal to RT, but in general, any equation of state is an equation that connects pressure, volume, and temperature. For different substances, it is different. So that connectivity between pressure, volume, and temperature representing a thermodynamic state is the thermodynamic equation of state. And the pressure that appears there is this one. So we have come across 2 different terminologies. One is mechanical pressure, which comes out of the consideration of force, and thermodynamic pressure, which comes out of consideration of thermodynamics. They are related because thermodynamic pressure, how it is sort of manifested. So we have understood from the kinetic theory of gases, for example, that the gas, it will apply say force on the walls of the container, or one gas molecule apply a force on another gas molecule due to collision, and that change of momentum is giving rise to some pressure. So in that way, the thermodynamic state is associated with that collision and transfer of momentum. So in that way, they are related, and we will try to bring out that relationship by this expression. So you have this mechanical pressure. I'm just writing this expression of pressure is equal to minus of thermodynamic pressure plus lambda plus 2 by 3 this one. So purely from algebra, we can see one thing, that if somehow this is equal to 0, then doesn't matter what is the value of mu, what is the value of lambda, mechanical and thermodynamic pressure are the same. So if this is equal to 0, then you will have the mechanical pressure identically equal to thermodynamic pressure without any approximation. It's just they are identically equal. And this is what? This is the hallmark of incompressible. Okay. So if you have an incompressible flow, this is what is satisfied. So if you have an incompressible flow, the mechanical and the thermodynamic pressure, they are identical. Yeah, so I'm sorry for the disruption and we will continue. So the mechanical pressure is equal to thermodynamic pressure when you have the fluid as incompressible. But incompressible fluid or incompressible flow rather in this case, that is there is no volumetric deformation. That type of situation is not always there, and if the flow is compressible, clearly this will not work. This is only for incompressible. So if it is compressible flow, then this exact identity will not work. But we can say that for compressible flow, we will have mechanical pressure equal to this one if lambda plus 2/3 mu equal to 0. This is what purely from mathematics we can say. Now, this is something which was postulated by Stokes. And Stokes said, this is something which will actually be valid for most of the practical cases, say 99% of the practical cases, if not 100%. and then this was known as Stokes hypothesis. So it's a hypothesis because it's not like a law. It is not something which you can prove, but it can be shown to be valid for most of the cases. So in that way, it's a hypothesis. I will try to explain you the physical foundation of this hypothesis very, very carefully. So to understand the physical foundation of the hypothesis, we will see what is thermodynamic pressure. So thermodynamic pressure, you can understand that it stems from the understanding of the thermodynamic processes. Thermodynamic processes in the molecular picture are associated with certain degrees of freedom of the molecules, that is independent motions. So every individual molecule in the most general sense will have translational degrees of freedom that they can translate along independent directions, rotational degrees of freedom, and also as a special case of the translational degrees of freedom, they can vibrate. So translational, rotational, vibrational, all sorts of degrees of freedom are culminated in the form of the manifestation of thermodynamic pressure. Now, because of the thermodynamic pressure, once there is a response of the fluid, so the fluid, what it will do? It will respond to the thermodynamic pressure, and in that way, that response is reflected by what? For example, a gas molecule colliding with the container. So that will make sure that a mechanical pressure is felt. And if the time scale of response of the fluid is almost intermediate or almost immediate, then whatever could be the thermodynamic pressure, that is the energy of the molecule, all of that after collision is realized in the form of a translational degree of freedom, by which the molecule has a translation as it bounces back after the collision, and in the process it has the manifestation of mechanical pressure. Okay. So in that way, the mechanical pressure and the thermodynamic pressure, they will be the same if the fluid almost instantaneously responds to the pressure which is imposed as a state property because of a thermodynamic state. Now that response will be almost immediate because the fluid relaxation time, that is the time that a fluid characteristically takes to respond to a say thermodynamic stimulus like pressure, is instantaneous. For all practical engineering considerations, it is instantaneous. But if the fluid itself is changing its, there is a force on the fluid which tries to create a change externally more rapid than that, then what will happen? Although that is not something very common, but that can happen. For example, you have a bubble which is rapidly expanding and contracting. Say you have a bubble like this, which is expanding and contracting at a time scale which is say a picosecond or femtosecond. So that is so fast that at each of the individual stages, equilibration of mechanical and thermodynamic pressure cannot be achieved, and then Stokes hypothesis will not be valid. But for most of the practical engineering problems and even practical physical problems, the change that is imposed on a fluid is not that fast. So the fluid relaxes to a new thermodynamic state quite instantaneously, so that this is actually true even for compressible fluids. And that means the Stokes hypothesis works. So if the Stokes hypothesis works, you will have lambda is equal to minus 2/3 mu. So instead of all the so many parameters, 81 parameters. We had lambda and mu as 2 parameters, and now 1 parameter, because lambda is expressed in terms of mu. So a fluid which obeys Stokes hypothesis is called a Stokesian fluid, because there is no guarantee that it will follow. It is just a hypothesis which is true for virtually almost all practical processes. The next physical understanding, see, lambda is related to volumetric deformation. So you can see that lambda into this volumetric deformation is the stress due to the volumetric change. So if this is positive, that means the volume is expanding. So what is the stress? See, viscosity is positive, that means lambda is negative. So if lambda is negative, that means if the fluid is expanding, the stress, the normal stress corresponding to that is negative, because lambda is negative and this is positive. So negative stress for an expanding fluid, negative normal stress for an expanding fluid is due to the fact that a fluid which is inherently expanding due to its natural compressibility effect, the incremental stress to stretch it further is negative. That means it doesn't require any incremental stress to stretch it further. It is spontaneously stretching. So we have come across the Stokesian fluid, the Stokes hypothesis, and the regime of applicability of the Stokes hypothesis. So just to give you a sort of a disclaimer, because Stokes is a researcher who has contributed to fluid mechanics in a way, at least the mathematical foundations of fluid mechanics, in a way in which not many others have done. So in that way, his contributions are pioneering, but it is very difficult to confuse between one and the other. All are in the names of Stokes. So Stokes' law. Stokes' law is what? It's the law that tells you what is the drag force on a spherical particle which is moving at a very slow relative velocity in a Newtonian viscous medium. So that is Stokes' law. Now, in this particular advanced fluid mechanics course, I cannot, it is not there in the syllabus, but in the next semester in the microfluidics course that I'm talking about, I will derive the details of the Stokes' law. So there is a Stokes' law, there is a Stokes equation, which we will see later on, which is a special version of the Navier-Stokes equation, and Stokes hypothesis that we see here. So all in all, lots of and there are Stokes problems, Stokes first problem and second problem that we will study in this course itself. So lots of advancements, early advancements in fluid mechanics given in the name of Stokes to honor his contributions. So now what we will do is we will get back to the Navier's equation and apply the expression for the tau ij with the Stokes hypothesis embedded to complete its description. So let us start with the Navier equation. Or the Cauchy equation. Okay. So this we derived earlier with absolutely no assumption except tau ij equal to tau ji. Now we will put a lot of assumptions by having this. This is called as the constitutive model. So the beauty of the Navier's equation is that it is independent of the constitutive model. That means the rheology of the fluid, Newtonian, non-Newtonian, whatever. But the specific rheology comes in the constitutive model. So you write this one. Okay. So now we will substitute that. So we will just write the derivative because that is what we have to do. So when you differentiate, see, I will show you how this is done. So when you differentiate with respect to xj, remember that it is also multiplied with delta ij, which is non-zero or 1 when only when j equal to I. So j will be switched to I. So it will become plus. Similar thing. Well, you could bring lambda out of the derivative because we have already assumed it's a homogeneous fluid, so lambda doesn't depend on position. Similarly for mu, but let us just keep it inside because that keeps the provision of both homogeneous and inhomogeneous. So we have not assumed lambda and mu as constant so far. We have, in the constitutive model, here we have kept lambda and mu. Homogeneous only will be reflected by that fact that they are constants. But even if they are not constants, we can put them inside the bracket and deal away or get rid of that assumption of constant, and they may be spatially varying also up to this. So now with this this consideration, the Navier's equation will become so now. So I will write the usual terms. This one plus plus bi plus some additional terms which are there only for certain special cases. So we have not considered the special cases so far, but those terms are a bit special ones. So that is why I am clubbing them separately. So I'm just writing one on the top of the other. So what I will do now is these two terms which I have written with green color, I will make a more thorough analysis, both physical and mathematical. So I will write with this one. Now we will use the homogeneous fluid for only this green term. So green term, only for the green term, not the rest we have not used anything. Only for the green term, if the homogeneous fluid is considered, then the lambda can be brought in outside the derivative. So then you can write So this is simply continuity of the second derivative. So if a derivative is continuous, say you have, I'm just giving you a simple example. Say you have this one. So this means you have second order derivative with respect to, first with respect to, so this is as good as this one. You could also have this one, which is equal to this one. So they are the same, provided the second order derivative is continuous, partial derivative. That means the order of derivative is not important. Whether you differentiate with respect to x first or y first, at the end you get the same thing. This one or this one, whatever you call. So that is the hallmark of a continuous second order partial derivative. And we are assuming that for any continuous medium. So this is as good as this one. So continuous second order partial derivative. Now this we can write as well as this one. So because j is a repeated index, it's just a dummy index. So that means you can use j, k, l, m, n, whatever, doesn't matter. It's basically summation over that from 1 to 3. So now if you club these two together, this entire thing will become this one. Because lambda, because mu is homogeneous constant, we can willingly just as per wish take it inside or outside, doesn't matter. So that means for a homogeneous fluid, this is the expression for this one. And for a Stokesian fluid, lambda will be minus 2/3 mu. So minus 2/3 mu plus mu, that is mu by 3. Because you have already assumed that it is homogeneous for deriving this, this is as good as mu by 3. So we can combine all these and write that for homogeneous, isotropic, Newtonian and Stokesian fluid. So for homogeneous, isotropic, Newtonian and Stokesian fluid, I'm just writing this equation with whatever simplifications we have done. Plus is mu by 3. So you can clearly see that the last term is 0 if it is compressible flow. So if it is compressible flow, the last term is 0. And that means that for incompressible flow, that term is not important. And anyway, if it is homogeneous, you could bring this mu out of the derivative. That is also there. So this is the celebrated Navier-Stokes equation. you can clearly understand the impact of Navier and Stokes in this. Navier's was the original equation of motion in which we infuse the Newton's law of viscosity for special case of homogeneous and isotropic fluid along with Stokes' hypothesis, and that is how the Stokesian name came. So the Navier-Stokes equation. Now, I mean, we have to understand. See, the Navier-Stokes equation is like the heart and soul of the continuum fluid mechanics. So, an in-depth understanding of this appears to be the most important and critical thing in any fluid mechanics course, advanced or whatever. In the regular fluid mechanics course, we do not get into this kind of rigor for looking into the background, but this is important. Now, clearly, this is like a, say, where did we start from? Say, linear momentum balance, Newton's second law. So this is essentially Newton's second law. I equal to 1 for x direction force balance, I equal to 2 y direction, and I equal to 3 z direction. Now, just to cast it in the form of a force balance, what we will do is we will make a little bit of simplification of this. So we'll use the product rule. We'll write so here for the product rule we will take uy as one function and rho into uj as another function. So rho uj sorry. So ui as one function and rho into uj as another function. So ui as one function. Rho uj into this one. Now we will combine certain terms. So if we combine these two terms, ui is common. You can recognize well from the continuity equation. In fact, this equal to 0 is the continuity equation. So that means the left hand side becomes what? So sorry, I have just written the same term duplicate twice. I must correct it. So I've just written the same term twice. Meant to write something different. So I just wanted to differentiate this. So this then it is rho into this. So I'm sorry, I just wrote it twice. So now if you combine the left hand side, you will have the rho as common. So that means this equation comes to rho as common in these two terms. Okay. So what we see here is just this is another version of the or another you can say just form of the Navier-Stokes equation, where we have taken into account the continuity equation on the top of the conservation law. But in that way, the this conservation principle, which was directly showing in the various terms that is now lost. So this is called as non-conservative form. That means that the font is not a conservative font, but it is a it's an intuitive form, because left hand side is what? So left hand side you can see this row is mass per unit volume, and this is what the next term is acceleration along the I direction. This we learned in fluid kinematics. So the left hand side is the mass into acceleration per unit volume. Mass into acceleration per unit volume. Therefore, the right hand side is force per unit volume. This is just Newton's second law, but because we have expressed in terms of Eulerian variables, it looks a bit different from what we learned in particle mechanics. But physically, Newton's second law, left hand side force mass into acceleration per unit volume. Right hand side is force per unit volume. What are the common forces that we have written, and we have to write at the body force also. So one is this force due to the pressure gradient which is acting on the fluid, which is the driving force for pipe flow. The viscous force, which is due to the viscous effect of the fluid. Any other body force that acts externally on the fluid, and the force due to volumetric dilation or compressibility. So the Navier-Stokes equation physically is nothing but the Newton's second law expressed in terms of Eulerian variables. So with that we will conclude this today's class. We will continue more with this in the next class. Thank you very much, and wish you all the best of spirit and health and enjoyment over the coming 7 days, where we have the festival break, and perhaps we will be meeting again in the coming week, coming Monday again the same time for the next class. By that time we will have no online class, and all the best, and goodbye for now.
Thank you, sir.
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 Thank you, sir.